5 months ago, I bought this Peugeot 106 with one goal in mind. Put this superbike engine under the bonnet, and with many ups and downs, failed attempts and money spent, it's finally running and driving. But there's one problem. It still looks like a 25-year-old beat up grocery getter. So today I'm going to change that. And to do that, we're going to paint it. But unfortunately, I don't have thousands of pounds to spend getting it professionally painted or buying a blow up paint booth. So we're doing it right here on the driveway. But first, if you watched the last video, you'll know there's a couple of things I've got to rectify. The first being the oil cooler. You guys made it clear in the comments it's a bad idea to remove it, so I've listened. I've bought this oil cooler. It's from a Toyota Avensis, and it should be small enough to fit behind the bumper, but big enough to do the job. And it's got these 8mm hose connections, which will make it super easy to connect up. But because it's not a standard oil cooler or oil cooler kit, I'm gonna have to do a little more work to make it fit. Which unfortunately means undoing some of the work I did in the last video, because I need to get the oil cooler back in this setup. The problem is, since I'm running this slimline oil pan for ground clearance, I can't just swap the old oil pan back on and call it done. But even though I'm not refitting the old oil pan, I've still got to remove the new one, because it needs to be adapted to take an oil return line. For that, I've just picked up an 8mm barbed fitting, which just needs an M14 thread to screw into. So the first step is drilling and tapping an M14 hole into the sump, and hopefully not making a mess of it. Once that's done, the return side of things is basically sorted, which means I'm halfway there. The next job is getting an oil feed to the cooler, and for that I'm going to reuse the stock outlet but with a bit of a twist. The original oil cooler lines were crimped and fixed in place, which makes them useless for what I need, so I've just bought another 8mm fitting that I'll be welding onto the stock outlet flange. The only catch is, back in the last video I actually blanked this outlet off, thinking I'd never need it again, so before I weld anything I need to drill it back out. With the hole drilled, I can weld the new fitting onto the flange, bolt it back in place and then crack on mounting the new oil cooler. That's just a case of making up some simple brackets to hold it securely and then connecting everything together using some oil safe hose. And before I forget, I've reinstalled the restrictor back behind the oil cooler just as it was before. So the oil cooler's all sorted, and that's nearly all the engine work done. But if you saw the last video, you'll know the throttle cable snapped. Luckily, you can buy a repair cable that comes with all the end you'll ever need. So let's try and fix it. So even though this fault almost left me stranded, the actual fix is dead simple with this repair kit. And no, just because it's a repaired cable, it don't mean it's going to be any weaker than a brand new one. All I've got to do is slide a new end onto the cable and tighten it down. That's job done. But to make sure I don't end up snapping another cable, which I definitely don't want happening again, I need to sort out a throttle stop at the pedal, which is something I completely overlooked before. The problem is, as you can see, the throttle pedal stops under cable tension way before it actually hits the floor of the car. So with my heavy foot on the throttle, all the extra force has to go somewhere, which in this case is the cable. To stop it happening again, all I've got to do is raise the factory throttle stop so the pedal itself bottoms out instead of relying on the cable. And in true professional fashion, I've done it with, a block of wood. Surprisingly, it actually worked mint. Now the throttle cable's fixed, I can start it to check the oil cooler's got no leaks. And the battery's flat. But luckily, Top Don have just sent me this jump starter, and it's actually pretty sick. Because honestly, it's been a bit of a game changer. It's a Top Don JS3000 jump starter, and it'll pretty much start out you've got cars, trucks, boats, whatever. If it's got an engine and a battery, chances are it'll get it going. So it's dead handy to have about. And what's sick is that it's not just a jump starter. It doubles up as a 2,400 amp hour power bank. So you get 2 USB ports, a USB-C port, and a 16.8 volt DC port. So there's plenty of power to charge all your stuff. It's even got a big torch on the front if you need it, and it comes in a proper tough carry case. I'm actually quite fussy when it comes to tools, but this feels really well built and good quality. So after using it, I would definitely recommend it. Look at that straight away, full of life. And the best bit is, Top Don gave me a bit of a discount to pass on to you guys. So if you want to grab one, use the link in the description and get yourself a bit of a discount. Anyway, back to the video. Now with the engine side of things finally finished, it's time to sort out the way this car looks. Over the past few months, I've built this crazy superbike powered Peugeot 106. But from the outside, you'd never even know. It's got nearly 25 years of scrapes, scratches, paint neglect and dirt build-up. So today it's time for it to change. This will definitely be the biggest paint job I've ever tackled, and you're probably wondering what colour paint I've gone for, but I'll show you that a bit later on in the video. Because first, I feel like I've got a cheat code to fix all the bodywork. All the dents and scrapes, they're pretty much sorted. Let me show you. I've managed to pick up a bonnet, 2 wings, a complete door, and the bumper you've already seen on the car. And because it's just a Peugeot 106, all those panels were dirt cheap, and it's going to save me so much time trying to fill all the dents around the car. So I'm going to start off by removing the bonnet, which is literally just 4 bolts and 2 gas struts to disconnect. And yes, believe it or not, this car actually came with gas struts from standard. Once the new bonnet's on, I can move on to the wings. These are pretty much the same story, about 4 bolts holding each one on, and then it's just a case of disconnecting the indicators and swapping the panels over. It's a simple process, but you've got to be careful not to scratch or dent anything while moving them around, otherwise the whole task is pointless. Then, once that's done on one side, I'll just repeat the same on the other side, making sure each panel lines up properly before moving on. Finally, after double checking the bonnet and wing alignment, I can whip off the old door, which is just 2 bolts and not even a single wire to disconnect. Honestly, without removing these panels, I'd have spent at least a week filling and sanding dents around the car, because the camera really makes the old panels look a lot better than they actually were. But I guess that's what you get buying a car covered in an inch of snow. With most of the dents out the way, I can move on to the longest and most tedious part of stripping the car down and removing everything I don't want covered in paint. I'm starting with the parts that are relatively easy to remove and leaving the trickier bits for later, when the power of masking tape can do its thing. And after full steam ahead removing parts, I suddenly had a realisation. I should probably wash the car at this point. Cleaning it now means the parts I'm removing are clean as well as the rest of the car. Plus, it was actually a nice break from the constant work of removing parts. So I'm just going around all the seals and trims with a detailing brush, aka a paintbrush, to agitate all the stubborn moss and years of dirt build-up. At this point, I'm not really bothered about scratching the paint while I'm washing it, because every surface on this car is going to get sanded down anyway, because if I want a decent paint finish later, it's got to be squeaky clean. Next, I removed the sunroof, mostly because I wasn't really following any logical order, just doing what seemed easiest at the time until I got distracted by the next thing. Well, that's out. And with the car looking more and more like a breaker, I had a thought. I wasn't originally planning on removing the engine, but it is a bit crusty and I don't know if it's going to annoy me if I don't do it. Plus, all the engine mounts I've painted are just matte blacked. The welding that I've done is just spray painted with matte black, and I could do with painting the inside of the wings here, which if I do with the engine in and the bonnet shut, they're not going to get painted. But hopefully I can take it apart with the radiator still connected, oil cooler still connected, just disconnect what's needed, sounds easier than it is, and get it out. Like I say, this is my first paint job and it's a lot of work. It's currently 11 o'clock, so let's see how long it takes to get the engine out. And with that being said, it really shouldn't take long at all. I literally built this thing from a standard 1.1 litre Peugeot 106, so by now I should know exactly how everything comes apart, which makes this a lot less stressful. The cool thing about this being a superbike engine is that the gearbox and engine are combined, which makes it super compact and really easy to manoeuvre in and out the engine bay. And because it's chain driven, I don't even have to remove the drive shaft to get the engine out, which saves a ton of time. I just had to jack up the car a little to reach the exhaust clamp and lower engine mount. Disconnecting the drivetrain is dead simple too, just a case of taking the chain off. Once everything's disconnected, it's finally time for the fun part, craning the engine out. And I think it's fair to say that was pretty timely. Engine's out, and it's took me just over an hour. Not bad going, to be fair. And it's a good job I removed the engine after all, because it revealed some highly unwanted rust holes on the opposite inner wheel arch to the one I'd already replaced a few videos ago. But the best way to deal with stuff like this is just to accept it, crack on, and get it done. Here you can see me cutting some small plates to replace the rusty metal. And once I've got the outline sorted, I can remove the rust with a die grinder. Not the most effective tool, but it's what I had lying around. Then, with the plates fitting somewhat snug, I can get them welded in and hopefully be done with fixing rust on this car once and for all. And with the rust finally sorted, I can give the engine bay its first proper clean in 25 years, and I'm really hoping that doesn't lead to any more unwanted discoveries. And while that's drying, I can move on to some more paint prep, which means tackling one of the only bits of damage left on the car, the scrape on the rear quarter panel. Unfortunately, you can't just unbolt and replace a rear quarter panel on a Peugeot 106, so this one's down to the filler. Filler, in my opinion, is a really hard skill to master, but I've watched enough YouTube videos to give it a go, and honestly, what better car to practice on than this one? While that's drying, I've gone over the whole car with a 600 grit sanding disc on the DA. And I'm making sure to cover absolutely every surface, because anything I miss won't let the new paint stick properly. And to get the filler as flat as possible, I'm always using big sanding blocks and trying to follow the curves of the body line. It takes a few goes to get it looking somewhat decent, but while that's drying, there's still plenty more to crack on with. So now I'm just starting to tape up everything I couldn't be bothered to remove. A bit tedious, but it's all part of getting a proper finish. And if you're enjoying this type of content, please help me out and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and it'll help me grow the channel, meaning I can keep bringing you videos just like this one, plus you're less likely to miss any future videos too. Then, before masking the engine bay, I gave every nook and cranny a scuff up with a Scotch-Brite pad, which took absolutely ages. Honestly, if you do this for a living, hats off to you, but you might want to click off the video before I actually start painting. So once I'd spent a lifetime Scotch-Briting every surface in the engine bay, I had to carry on masking everything left attached to the car that I didn't want painted. And I definitely underestimated how much masking there actually was. Okay, so I'm currently getting rained on, but I've finished prepping the whole car, which it took a good week, so I'm so happy it's done. Firstly, I filled and sanded all the remaining dents, then I went over the whole car with a DA and Scotch-Brighted in all the nooks and crannies, especially in the engine bay. It took forever. Then finally, I went over the whole car with a degreaser. So let me show you the new paint. It's called Evil Emerald Black Pearl, a custom colour which in a dull lighting looks almost black, but then in the sun should look super metallic. And I'm so excited to see it on the car. So even though it is raining, I am going to paint some of the car because I want to do it in two parts to try and make life easy. First, I'm going to paint the inside of the bonnet and the engine bay. Then once that's done, I can close the bonnet and go around the whole car painting the outside. And for the first coat, because the engine's got quite a lot of bare metal showing, I've got to use something called an etch primer. The reason for that is because etch primer is unlike any standard primer. It's specifically designed for use on bare metal, and that's down to it containing an acid that lightly etches into the metal, giving it a super good grip and some corrosion protection too. And after going what felt like pretty much the whole engine bay with etch primer, I can go over the top of that with high build primer. That's just to make sure every surface is nice and uniform, hopefully covering up any chips or sanding marks. Then with the primer in done, it's finally time to lay some paint. As I said before, if you're a professional, I'm sorry you're watching this, because I'm definitely not a professional. I'm just having a go and trying to learn along the way. With the base coat done, all that's left is to apply a thick coat of lacquer, which gives all the paint its nice deep shine, and in my case a few runs. Then it's just a case of repeating all the steps I've done in the engine bay on the rest of the car. So I'm back to square one on the primer, but this time I'm only covering any filler work I've done, because from my research it should be fine spraying on top of the original lacquer, as long as it's been sanded for a good key and is in good condition. And just like before, it's time for base coat. It all comes together so quick. Weeks of prep work and the whole car will be painted in probably under an hour. Then to finish it all off, I've applied a good amount of professional grade 2K lacquer, which gives it a nice shiny finish and dries rock hard like factory paint, meaning I can fight off them stone chips for years to come. That's the car all painted, it's looking sick. It's had overnight to dry, it's already been rained on, but I did have an accident with some dandelion seeds, which I'm hoping I can sand out when it's fully dry. So let's get it unmasked and start the rebuild. And after unmasking all my hard work, it's not long before it starts to look like a car again, which is super exciting. Every piece I put on just makes it one step closer to this project finally being finished. And if you're wondering what I'm going to be doing with this car, head over to my Instagram where in the near future I'll be announcing what's happening with it. And one of you guys might end up with it. After the engine's all bolted up, I decided to give the bird's nest of a wiring loom a tidy up, removing all unnecessary wires, replacing old tape with new, and just routing everything as neat as possible. And with that done, it's time to have a proper look at the car.
That is a Peugeot 106 completely done, and I think it's safe to say this car's been through a crazy transformation, and it's hard to remember where it actually started. It's definitely been my biggest project yet, and I can't believe it's finally finished. And if you want to see what's happening next with the car, make sure to subscribe and keep your eyes peeled. And I've already got the next project lined up for the channel, which I'm super excited about, so stay tuned for that. I really appreciate all your guys' support, and I can't believe how quickly the channel's growing. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you all, and I'll see you in the next one. And that is the Peugeot 106. I look like a wet lettuce. Like, maybe I'll walk into it. And that, no, didn't like that. And that is the Peugeot 106 finally finished. I just want to say, I can't believe it's finally finished after that. And that is the Peugeot 106 finally finished. I can't believe it's finally finished. And I've already got the next project lined up for the channel, which I'm super excited about. So subscribe.